Spring football has come to a close. We recap this month. We recap the month with a great special guest and look ahead towards the fall with our updated depth chart predictions. Plus, has Greg Gard done enough? I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome into the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, we're joined by Badgers beat reporter Nick Osen from 247 Sports to recap spring football, go over some impressions, and put together an updated depth chart. Luke Fickell has a new recruit in his ever-growing 2025 class, and Greg Gard makes crucial additions to this team. We'll get into how this new team will fit together. We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you can get your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button so you know when we make new content. Justin, I'm sorry for you and all the other Milwaukee Bucks fans on this podcast because my Pacers are in through to the
patronize
second round.
me.
Yes, but so I listen. As a Pacers fan, we don't get wins and none of that, so this is nice. Like we actually got to be a Giannis-less Bucks team, but I know many of you out there are Bucks fans, so I'm not gonna prod too hard, but happy about that. How you doing, my friend? How's it going, Justin? How's your week been?
I'm doing good. I'm kind of happy to be out of my misery on that one because if Giannis wasn't coming back, it doesn't really matter. We were either going to lose this one or the next one. So whatever. I want my Brewers to keep playing hot. We lost to the Cubbies today. No more of that.
One of my teams.
No more of that.
Me too, my friend.
Joining us today from 247 Sports, Badgers beat reporter and third-time visitor to the Bucky Report, Nick Osen at the Real Nick Osen on Twitter. Nick, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, my guys. Honestly, I love this show. I was looking forward to it. It's been awesome to, kind of become a little bit more of a regular guest. We've got a ton of football, obviously, some recruiting news, basketball breakdowns. I think we've just got a full show that, maybe we didn't have as much news the last time. So it's going to be fun to kind of break things in. And then I'm sure I'll be back again before OVs get going too.
You know it. You're always a welcome guest on the show. We certainly appreciate everything you do. Badger 247. If you're not a subscriber, it's very worth the paywall. Trust me, there's really good content that Nick and Evan put out there and other guys. So really good stuff. Obviously the boards are out there. I'm sure many of you are on 247 Sports, but if you're not, check out Nick's work there. He is at the Real Nick Osen on X as well. All right, boys, let's get into some spring football here. Spring football's done. So 15 practices in the books. Nick, we're going to start with you. Give us your overall big picture impressions. You were there. I think you were there for almost all of them, right? So talk us through kind of big picture, what you saw. What were your overall impressions of the practices?
Yeah, I was fortunate, very fortunate to be at every practice that I was in the state for. So I only missed that first one because of March Madness. But outside of that, I made all of them. And, I've got three kind of overarching takeaways. I'm going to go a little more specific into vague before dishing to you guys a little bit. One isn't breaking news for anybody really, especially for you guys that I know are tapped in, but it deserves kind of being talked about and the staff deserves a ton of credit. The linebacker room is going to go from an area that people, I don't want to be negative because those guys, I think of guys like CJ Getz, things like that, they gave it their all, but it wasn't a perfect maybe system fit at times or just not as much depth. That's going to be a real strength this year. Whether you look at inside or outside, as long as, knock on wood, you don't see a lot of injuries. Guys, that room, I look at my standouts from 14 practices. I feel like 8, 9, 10 of those, you're looking at least 1 or 2 LBs. So I think that position group, coached by Coach Tressel, Coach Mitchell, obviously Fickell at the top of the defense, that's going to be phenomenal. I'm pumped as a fan of football and, covering this team to see that. I think number 2 for me, the wide receiver room. We saw Will Pauling come into a legitimate Big Ten star. We saw, especially late in the season when he was healthy, what Bryson Green can do. I know we talked a little bit about Trech Kekahuna on the show last time we were together.
We
And
talk
now
about him
I'm
a lot
seeing,
on this show.
yeah, and rightfully so. Honestly, he is awesome. You know, you look at guys kind of coming up a little bit then, like Vinny Anthony, Quincy Burrows, CJ Williams. Like, I think that the depth in that room is going to be a real plus. And getting to speak with Coach Guyton recently in a media group, I'm just really impressed with kind of his energy and how he connects with his players, kind of how I've talked or written about Coach Blazek as well on the O-line. And then finally, this, you especially saw this last practice, which last year was a little more special teams focused. This year, their final practice was special teams, but there was also a good amount of scrimmage elements. And, you know, I obviously talked to recruits and they get to see their practices and, you know, ask how things went. The energy and the physicality that this team practices with is quite impressive. It's exciting. And, you know, I'm writing about something similar in one of my columns for the site, but guys, I really think it's going to translate well. And I think for any Badgers fans, you know, I'm not going out there saying anything crazy that they're going to go undefeated maybe or anything, but I think this team is going to be much improved and just more cohesive when we get there this fall.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned something good there at the end about the physicality. We talked about, Justin and I talked about that a couple weeks ago, about how Luke Fickell actually had said that this year they were going to be pushing a lot of that. They were actually going to, last year they didn't really scrimmage much. They didn't really go full pads and full tackle. And the fact that they did that this year, because we saw, right, at the beginning of last year, there were tackling issues, there were fumble issues. So that clearly has been a theme that everyone who's been at these practices has been talking about. So you obviously saw the physicality there, which is great. And the linebacker room, I mean, listen, that's music to all of our ears. And you were being political and nice about last year's team. They were horrible. The linebacker group was horrible last year in many respects. And that's just the fact. Like my guy who I absolutely loved coming into last year, Mumajong Meta, was complete no-show. And the outside, the issues were obviously, you know, talked about a ton, and there were tons of it, right? So I'm happy to hear all those things, and I'm really happy about the physicality. I think that's something to me that is going to set us apart this year from what we were last year, because clearly you have year 2 of Luke Fickell, right? Year 2 of his system, his product, and clearly the physicality that, you know, that he displays, which is great. I mean, I'm psyched about what you just shared, which is great. Justin, what are your thoughts on some of the overall impressions?
Well, I mean, that one is a huge one to me in terms of the impact that it has on the team, because the way I look at it, the major theme last year was finishing. Well, one of the aspects of finishing is finishing out a play and getting the tackle or being able to make plays in space, because you actually have to get to the guy and wrap up and make the play. That is an area we struggled last year. And honestly, it's not shocking when you think about it if there wasn't a ton of contact. I think part of it is that I think they also feel like there's a lot more depth this year, which gives them the opportunity to say, all right, we're not going to kill our guys running them through practice here and have them be just destroyed by the time we actually get to the season. Now you actually have guys that you can kind of hockey line in and out to be able to do it. I mean, the difference between last year and this year in terms of the cornerback room, in terms of the linebacker rooms, even the safety room, is night and day. There's so much depth on the defensive side. I think we still are a little apprehensive about the defensive line, but it sounds like Whitlow is an actual dude as a coach, and I feel good about him maximizing what that room has in it, which will hopefully be, at worst, we get average play there, because if the linebackers are good and they're able to just do their job on the defensive line, this defense is going to be really good.
No, I'm totally with you there, Justin. I'll say first off, I think Coach Whitlow, what I've written about him, I think he's a great teacher, and I think he's going to be a really good developer. So I totally see him. Actually, frankly, I've already seen him at practice getting the most out of these guys early. I think of growth, and I know we'll get into these guys a little bit, but from a guy like Elijah Hills or Ernest Willard Jr., you guys know I'm a huge fan of his and his potential long term. So I'm seeing that right there. And yeah, you know, just the linebackers, I think you made a great point. You know, both you guys and Justin with the hockey line, like you can have guys that specialize in the pass rush if you need, but also guys that are going first down, second down, third down, because they're complete linebackers. When I say that, I'm specifically thinking of a guy like Cheney, Daryl Peterson. Lowry has really impressed me with the complete nature of his game. So I'm excited about that group as a fan of football, and obviously covering the team. You definitely enjoy success often, and I think that group's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks to all of you who are joining us live today. We'll get through some comments as much as we can. Slim Lewis says, another year under Luke Fickell, and the strength program cannot be underestimated. This program got soft under Chris, and we saw residual effects of that at times last season. David Thering says, this is encouraging to hear and makes me feel more optimistic about Badger football. Just want to level myself a bit because this is a new Big Ten. If you ever want to listen to us live, follow us on Twitter. We post when our live shows are going to be. Typically they're Sunday evenings, but we've been doing a lot of Sunday afternoon ones as well. All right, so let's get into positions, guys. We're going to start with quarterback. Pretty clear, I think, what we're going to see. TVD, obviously, my depth chart has TVD at the 1 and Lock at 2. I'm assuming, Justin, you're the same. Nick, tell us about what you kind of saw from those guys as spring progressed. The last time you were here with us, you talked a little bit about TVD. And now after seeing 15, is it clear in your mind, is there really much of a QB battle going on there, or is it really TVD's job to lose at this point?
That I think you phrased that really well, and I'm going to give the generic yes to both sides. And here's why. If they, took the field this week, I would certainly expect Tyler Van Dyke to be the guy. I think he not only is, likely more skilled, but he showed, I think, really just kind of strong growth and progress. Specifically, I think I made a mark. It was like the last 3.5 weeks, especially. So yes, in terms of the battle, I would also have him 1. However, I would like to give credit to Braden Locke, because that is a tough spot. When you're covering a team, or it's not like I played D1, but playing these sports all these years and you're in a competitive battle, like, it is easy to get down about things. If you have an off day or an off throw, things like that. And that guy has shown me a lot too, not just physically, not just mentally, but even with his throws. So I'm of the mindset that, yes, I do think Tyler Van Dyke will be the guy. I think he strung together some terrific play these last couple of weeks. Both quarterbacks had pretty good days in the big scrimmage day too, which was awesome. But then I think there's also reason to be excited for Locke going forward. But yes, I like what Van Dyke's shown. And you know what also kind of deserves noting with him? Coach Longo let him get a little more mobile the last couple of weeks at practice. He showed some of that speed, some of that athleticism. And I think that's an area too, you think of Mordecai from last year, that can kind of open up this offense further as well.
Yeah. What did you see from Mabry as spring wore on? Any thoughts on him potentially being able to
Justin was going to bring
to make the jump next year and push for spring ball next year?
Yeah, so I know we're both smiling because we've messaged about him before. I've been quite impressed. I knew about Mabry, obviously covering a lot of recruiting, that he's a guy that was going to be ready to get into the playbook and really kind of get that early enrollee freshman head start mentally with the plays. I think the first week or so, I think, anybody would say it, including himself, that like took a little bit to get into it, as is, very normal at any position, especially quarterback. But what is it now? May 5th. So probably right around that second week of April or so, he really started looking comfortable. I'd say mostly in terms of the pacing of the game a little bit, as well as making some quite impressive throws and like red zone work, even at times, when that's focused on the defense. So he's going against some 1s and 2s and things like that. I would still, we're just asking for a fun projection. Like, I still think it'd be tough to beat out Locke, I think, next year, definitely. But in terms of freshman arm, freshman mentality coming in and getting to the most important position really in sports, like, he's impressed. And he's a guy that I know we've talked a little bit too, probably deserved maybe a higher rating based on just what I've seen with my own eyes in terms of his progression. Justin can't hide his smile right now.
Nick, can you go ahead and repeat that, please?
But no, I think there's a lot of reason to get excited. And, I think that room's going to be a real positive, which, let's be honest, it had the potential to be last year, but unfortunately, new system for everybody, and then injuries really hurt. So definitely, I know we'll move along, but great position to talk about, and overwhelmingly positive, guys. There were several practices as we went on late, not a turnover or 1 or 2. I think not even like a tipped ball or a turnover. So some really good days.
I mean, that's really nice to hear, obviously, given what we saw last year in the spring game, which Justin and I and Ryan were at. Of course, seeing Mordecai throw, I think, 4 interceptions in that game. That was rough. So it's good to see that spring ended on a nice note with the quarterbacks. Running back, Justin, I'm assuming give me your 1-2 in running backs.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious it's going to be Mellusi and then Tyree Walker. I actually think as the season wears on, Walker's going to be the one that ends up getting a little bit more of the load. I just think that he's probably more adept at being able to do. The way I look at it is this: we have Jones coming in, and we have Dupree. I think that's kind of how they're going to be used. Is that Jones is going to be kind of the Tyree Walker type, and then Dupree is going to be kind of your guy. You probably want 12 to 15 carries, and then try to find 5 other ways to get him the ball, whether it's a pass play or something else, because then you just limit the pounding he's going to take over the course of the season. And those two are kind of similar in terms of how they run. They're a little bit more of an elusive kind of guy and a guy who can kind of do some things in space, whereas Walker's a little bit more of a battery ram. Same with Jones. Still elusive, but I think they're more built to handle a little bit more of the pounding they take.
I think that Mellusi still is the guy. I know we differ a little bit on our opinion of Mellusi, Justin. I think the Tyree Walkers. It's really nice that we have like a 1A, 1B situation. That sounds like what it is, and Nick will tell us which one of us is right in a minute. But I think Mellusi is still going to be the guy that if look, his health is critical, right? He has to be healthy, and if he stays healthy, to me, he could have a big year. He's owed a big year at this university. He's done amazing stuff for us. He's been such a consistent player when he's healthy. I expect him. Hopefully he's healthy all year. And if he is, I think he's the guy, and I think he can finally have that big blowout year that he's deserved to have here at Wisconsin. Nick, do you think Walker is going to be the guy at some point, or do you think it's Mellusi?
Yeah, honestly, I hate to always kind of pick diplomatically, but it's just kind of how I handle these things, and they tend to be accurate. If you ask me right now, I think it's a 1A, 1B type of scenario. Like, again, they play this week. I see Mellusi being the first guy out there. I see him being a type of every down back potential. But Tyree Walker, with how he's handled himself, with what the staff thinks about him, and of course what we've seen on the football field, like, he is going to get a great amount of touches. And I'm just curious, just because, I'm no mathematician, but there's one ball, and obviously there are weapons, at least 4 or 5 legitimate weapons on the field at all times. Like, I'm curious how these guys are all going to get enough touches. I can tell you, quite honestly, being around the team, that it's a very selfless mentality, which I think is really good. I mean, I'm not even projecting myself. Coach Fickell said, like, he feels like the team is in a really good spot. I can't think of the exact word, but whether it was just like the spirit, competitive spirit, mentally, he said that last week, and I've seen it myself being around these guys. So I don't think there's like a me type of mentality. However, at running back, I will say Walker has done too much to not be featured, but Mellusi also didn't come back, and he also had a good spring to not be, looked at as a guy. So I think you're looking at 2 Big Ten caliber starting running backs. And I'm not going to often go deeper than 2 names. I want to hear, like I said, defer to your guys' depth charts and kind of just add analysis here and there. But it wouldn't be fair to really a couple guys. I think Cade Yakimelli and Gideon Ituka, when he was out there, not saying that they're going to be featured or anything, but really, really good springs. I had Yakimelli as a standout. I know several of us did after that scrimmage day last week. So that room's in a really good spot, guys, and I'm curious to see how they're all utilized. I wouldn't be shocked, in kind of a fun way, to see like a Mellusi, Walker, or Aker in the backfield, and Yakimelli, or let's say Aker, somebody lined out in a different spot, 2 backs at times. Wouldn't shock me at all.
It's kind of a segue question here, real quick, Nick. What's your impression? Do you think this team is going to be throw more than last year, or you think we're going to lean on the run a little bit more heavy this year, and with the depth in that room? Because I'm really curious to see how that plays out from an offensive standpoint this year.
No, that is really good question. I mean, this isn't even like based off kind of what I've seen, because I feel like there was a pretty healthy split. I know that what I've seen based on kind of some O-line strengths, specifically throughout kind of as spring ball progressed, as well as just kind of the weapons and the fact that you again have a mobile QB, I like the idea of leaning into the run a little bit. I'm not telling you it's going to happen, but I know we're all high on the defense, so they shouldn't be playing from behind too often. And you've got like every type of running back you really could want in terms of like a speed guy, a do-it-all guy, a physical bruiser, a couple guys that can catch out of the backfield. So, yeah, I would say whether it might not be, run dominant, I think it'd be very, paramount and imperative to lean into it a little more because I will say you'll walk into week one with at least 6 guys I would trust with the football out there in that group. I really would.
Listen, that room, it's just music to my ears, by the way, just hearing all this talent that's in this room right now and all around the offense, which is great. Let's move on to receiver now. So I'll go first here, and then Justin, let's come to you for your depth. I'm going to go. So Pauling and Kekahuna in the slot. I think Kekahuna clearly has had a good spring. 40 catches is going to be tough to get to, as Justin really likes that for 40. And it's a fair point. I mean, you just brought up how many weapons there are, and there's only one ball. And there's a lot of people to sort of mouths to feed, if you will. And on the outside, I think that's really the interesting discussion. Obviously, Bryson Green, I love that guy. He's going to be the top guy. The question is, who's on the other side? Who's starting? From everything that we've read, from what you've said and all the other journalists that are writing about it, Vinny Anthony's had a really strong spring. I still like Tyrell Henry. I feel like he's a guy that I think will kind of emerge as the second best outside guy. But obviously with Vinny Anthony, CJ Williams. So I'm going to officially say Green and Henry, and then Vinny and CJ basically backing those guys up with, of course, honorable mention to Quincy Burrows. There's a lot of weaponry still even below that. But that's where I'm going to go. Justin, where are you on your receivers?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Anthony, and it's going to be Green, and then obviously Pauling, and then Kekahuna in the slot. If I'm saying my top 3 wide receivers, it's going to be, I think Pauling and Kekahuna are probably going to have the 2 most catches. I think Green is going to be a little bit different. I think the outside guys, the biggest thing I want to see this year, it's not more catches, it's more explosive. So I want to see that yardage go up a little bit for some of those guys, especially like Pauling is one of them. He was very, like, I would rather see him down at 60 catches with similar yardage. I want to see him be up in that 13, 14, 15 yards per catch range. And that means the guys on the outside are going to have to get up in that 16 or 17 range. And I think that I feel better with, you have a quarterback, his strength is the ability to attack downfield in Van Dyke. I'm hopeful that is a strength of this offense, and those guys are able to make some plays, because if that's the case, it's really going to open up those underneath routes to Kekahuna and Pauling. And I just think they're going to get bulk catches.
That's a really key point. Is like TVD's ability to throw the ball downfield, which we know was an issue last year with Mordecai. We saw that multiple times, and that's a big thing. Nick, your thoughts on the receivers, what you've seen, where do you think kind of it shakes out?
Yeah, so, as you guys could see, running back room, maybe my favorite group this year. I'll be a little quicker on wideout. I would agree a little bit more just in terms of like, projections, but like the depth chart wise, with a little bit what Justin said, because Anthony, I just feel like, I don't know, you count all the wild plays. I don't know who maybe would have had the most, as that second wideout, but just coming in there, like Coach Kenny Guyton came in consistently talking about consistency from his group. And I think Anthony was the most consistent. And then looking at that next kind of tier, Trech definitely like there with Pauling. I like Burrows there. And probably Williams. I think that both those guys just demonstrated a bit more of a body of work. But Tyrell Henry, I like long-term too, Reggie.
A question for you on that. Do you think that Pauling is going to be used on the outside at all this year? Was he? Did you see it at all in camp?
At all? I didn't see it. It's always tough to watch different positions and stuff. But I guess what I would say is I'd be surprised if he didn't get some chances out there. Okay. I think is what I would say, just because whether it's wanting to play him with Trech or just wanting to kind of grow his skill set, because he is a future pro. Yeah. Do I think he'll be featured there? I don't think so, because you've got bodies that can play on the outside, and he's phenomenal in the slot. But yeah, a look here and there wouldn't shock me at all.
Okay.
Rounding out the weaponry, it looks like Jackson McGowan's going to be the guy, which, Justin, I know you like McGowan since he's come in. Anything that you think goes against that? Do you feel like, Nick, it's McGowan's going to be the guy at tight end? Looks like he's the guy. What's been impressive about him at practice?
Yeah, a couple things that have really impressed about him, and I was excited, when Wisconsin got him. I think the athleticism and what he showed that he can do with the ball in his hands on his high school film, and then some of the catches that he made in camp. I think he had probably two of the, I don't know, throwing out a random number, but 10 or 11, like just most impressive, best catches really of spring ball. I can think of one very well at the scrimmage day last week, one hand moving around, kind of taking a hit. Like, it's really impressive what he can do. Still needs to continue to build with Brady Collins in that weight room and, add to his blocking skill set. I think that's a group out of any of these that it is going to be like even maybe a different guy, not in terms of starting, but most productive, maybe every month or so, because like Ashcraft showed some things last year. Nowakowski had some really good days in spring. I can tell you that as a fact. And then a couple highlight plays, JT Seagraves. So, who do I think? Yeah, I think probably McGowan or Ashcraft is, among the top guys, but Nowakowski has so much kind of love and respect from that room, and he backed it up this spring that you will absolutely see him get a good amount of run too, as he should.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a by committee room. It's going to be there's going to be some situational use. McGowan is obviously, I think, and I do have kind of a question on this. Is he the fastest of the tight ends? Or is it hard to tell? That's a good thing if it's hard to tell, because he's very athletic as a wide receiver.
Yeah, it's hard to tell just because you don't, you often see them going at the same time. I would say from what I saw, Seagraves can move a little bit too, but
he's in that 4.6 range.
That's who I would guess would be the fastest.
Yeah, I'm remembering one similar, like a seam route, when he just blew by and like actually got a really nice, I think it was like a 40+ yard throw from Braden Locke. So between those two, I wouldn't say it's night and day, for sure, in terms like this is obvious, but yeah, both can move, and that's what excites me about their athleticism.
Before we end on offense, let's quickly touch on O-line. Like, I think the line of the depth chart seems pretty set in stone, right? Nelson, Bruner, Renfro, of course, and then Huber and Malman, right? So that seems like it's pretty set. The second line, I think, is where you have a little bit more discussion. Kevin Haywood is a guy that I absolutely love, potentially coming in at left tackle. Now you've got Barrett Nelson, you've got Kadonko. Who impressed you in that second group, Nick, that looks like they're going to emerge and really find their way into that two deep at O-line?
That's a really good question. I think Haywood is as advertised. I think he came in, as the big time recruit and has really looked good. If I had to pick a guy, it might be Kadonko, just because he was a guy.
That's good to hear.
I didn't know a ton about him when I came here, obviously because I'm covering the recruiting classes and things like that. He's been quite consistent. So those are probably top two that come to mind. But I will continue to say, I think it was on this show, I've certainly talked about it with Justin off of this, Emerson Mandel is going to come in. And yeah, it was on this show. And he is going to
he's going to do some
things. He's going to come in. He's going to be solid this year. And he's a future, I'm going to stick with it, man, a future first or second round pick in the league. Fantastic. I firmly believe that.
I won't disagree on that. I guess that what I would say with this one is let's make it simple here. I think we saw the same starting group pretty much most of spring. There's obviously a couple guys like Barrett Nelson who are banged up. Who do you we'll stay with the starting five that we have, but who do you think are our swing guys? Because I think we can look at this in name only. And I just think that if this staff was pressed into it, they would be really uncomfortable putting Haywood out there as a true freshman, regardless of how high his ceiling is. And I think we all agree the sky is the limit for him long term. But I think this team has aspirations where they're pushing to win this year and win, hopefully win big. Do you think Leighton Nelson's going to be that tackle? And who would be the guy on the interior, if you were to say, is going to be the swing inside guy?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. If I had to give a name, and I will say it, I'm going to use this name to answer both parts because I know that this kid possesses a lot of versatility. I actually got to speak with him upon committing. And I think Leighton Nelson would kind of be, at least one of my top two options because like he has the little tape, he has the experience at CC level. Clearly, there's a connection with Coach Blazik, and yeah, I've gotten my interview with him. Like, yeah, I'm coming in, I'm not expecting anything, I got to compete. Love talking with this kid, by the way, but I think he's got kind of the perfect skill set as a swing guy. That'd be the name I'd give you there.
Okay. Nice. Well, listen, we should be good on the offensive side of the board. Let's quickly move to defense. We do want to talk a little bit of basketball today too, so we're going to go fast. Here's what we'll do for the defense. Justin, let's go. We're going to do 2 down linemen, by the way, because we've heard that's pretty much what's been happening. So let's go.
I think
2
we
down
know
linemen. Right, Justin, give me your guys. JTJ, Kurt Neal. Is that where you're at?
Yep. It's going to be those. That's their top 2. I think we'd all agree with that.
So, and I think, obviously we got Elijah Hills, got Ben Barton in there. So let's focus on we're going to focus a little bit on the next couple groups. So let's talk linebacker. I'm going to go first here. I'm interested to hear what everyone's 1-2 line is across all linebackers here. Okay. So we're going to go 2 inside. I'm going Chaney and Jaheim Thomas. And on the outside starters, I'm going Leon Lowry. I originally had someone else on the other side, but I'm going to go Peterson now based on everything that I've been reading from what you've been saying, Nick, and everybody else. Like, I did not expect Peterson to really be the guy coming out of spring. I really thought that we were going to see maybe Pius kind of take that, Heiberger someone, but I think Pius and Heiberger on the line 2, and then Curtis and Allegro on line 2 and the inside. Justin, where do you differ on that? What do you think about linebackers?
I actually am pretty much in lockstep with that. I actually think it will be Chaney and Jaheim Thomas right off the top. The difference here is that last year we didn't see a lot of switching. There's going to be a lot more switching this year. And I think Pius is going to be a guy that they're really going to look at as a pass rush specialist a little bit more. I really like Peterson. And it sounds like his pass rush game has taken off, obviously, this spring. I'm curious which one of those two would be the guy that they want out there if they had to have a sack or a flash play in that situation. Because I do think Pius, from just a measurable standpoint, is a little bit more, offers a little bit more, but sounds like Peterson really had a good spring. The middle linebacker position, I just don't even know what to say because there's so many athletic bodies. We don't even have a Tackett out there yet. Like, he barely played this spring. And that's another athletic body that has not even set foot on the field. You have Sebastian Cheeks is another guy that could be out there pushing. Like, they are so stacked at that middle linebacker position. And I know none of these guys are other than Thomas, there's probably not a guy that you look at and say, this guy is a bona fide stud. But I think there's a lot of potential in that room for guys to really flash and become good this year.
Yeah, I think, you guys heard me kind of wax poetic about this room already. So I'll be pretty quick. Outside, honestly, the ones, and again, I just always have to specify projections based on what we've seen, just as the reporter side, nothing's been named. But Daryl Peterson, man, that guy was maybe the best player in camp, honestly. And I didn't know what to expect from him. And he impressed, and he turned a lot of heads in media, fans that have read our stuff, and the staff. So Peterson, Lowry outside, I would go with, Thomas, of course, and then Chaney. And I realize I'm not the only media member that has said or written this. He looks quicker. He looks faster than he was last year. So those are my ones. And then you've got, Pius, who's certainly going to play. Inside, then Curtis and Allegro. But I will say, because, Justin, you went through some great names, but didn't mention him. And I think this guy could be a dude at Wisconsin. I really do. Tyler Chanzy is a guy also.
I really like this film out of high school. I just figure that he's a younger guy than some of the others. So
yep, still young. So not, I'm not pushing him too high, but like stacked some really good days last couple of weeks. And then I don't think you can go wrong mentioning a Heiberger or a Nelu. Both of those guys were truly some of the best outside guys the last couple of weeks, like out of anybody.
One thing I do want to bring up before we jump on, Witt, do you think he's back ready to go for fall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure how much depth they've gone into with that. I assume that he's going to be back, but he's another guy that adds a different skill set, a little bit different body to that room. And I think that he's another guy that gives you some opportunity.
Yeah. Not a ton of depth in there. So I guess, I shouldn't say that with certainty, but just from watching him like working out on the sides and things like that. Like, yeah, I would definitely expect that. And again, he had a fun first week or two as well.
It's really great to hear guys like what happened with Peterson and Cheney, and kudos to the guys. There's been that room has been turned over completely. And when you have that kind of competition behind you, guys like Cheney and Peterson who were here last year, who didn't play well like necessarily all year, the fact that they are really shining with this kind of a room says a lot about their determination and dedication to improving. So kudos to those guys. That's fantastic. In the secondary, anything, and let's just kind of talk general about the secondary. I want to talk about Amari Snowden because he's a name that popped up quite a bit in your write-ups and other write-ups. So we know Rico Hallman and Forkerin. We know Delancey and Duclona. We know those guys are there. We know the safeties are Wohler and Latu. I want to hear about Amari Snowden. How do you think he looked in the spring? Do you think he finds his way into the two deep? And the same question goes for Braden Moore.
Yeah, I think Amari Snowden, a lot of people were asking me about him early on. And I think he's a guy I'll mention in the same breath as, a Braden Moore, though he was pretty consistent throughout, or an Elijah Hills or CJ Williams on offense that really kind of progressed throughout spring. So that is a real positive I can say about Snowden. He made a couple really good, I think I don't remember if it was 2 pass breakups or like 1 PBU and an interception or something, but I remember writing some great things about him recently. I like his potential. I want to add a player, though, because you went through names, great names, Rajiv, but that somebody that had a good spring that I don't think really gets talked about a ton. And I don't know if it's who Justin's thinking of, but he's smiling.
Max Lofi?
Lo-Fi?
Okay, I'm going to add 2 because, yes, he was big time. Max and Austin Brown.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Brown, yeah. You think Brown's another starter? You think it's Wohler and Brown?
It's a deep spot. Spot. So I'm not going to go that far yet, just because, there's still some experienced guys back there. But yeah, I mean, you look in coverage even. Max, like you mentioned, and then AB. I mean, he didn't always win the reps, but like he was locked in on a guy like Bryson Green. Green had to do everything at times, just using his length and physicality to make some grabs. So I just feel like Justin said it, 15 minutes ago or so. I don't even mean to be like over generalizing or being overly positive because the depth is there. And so you don't want injuries, of course, but I think there's just more maybe faith and confidence. If, something unfortunate does happen, guys will step in and be ready. Braden Moore, what I'll say is that dude can fly around and he's not afraid to hit for sure.
Very excited about it.
There's 2 dudes coming in this fall, by the way, that people need to remember too. Agard and Lucas. Those are guys that 100% from an athleticism standpoint, they will push. And they're advanced for incoming freshmen.
Before we move on from football, 2 questions that are popping up here in the chat that I think they're really good ones. First one, what about Chris Brooks? Tyler says he was flashing last spring, I thought, then got hurt. You don't really hear his name anymore, really. Nick, anything on Chris Brooks from the receiver side that you saw during spring?
I think he's hurt. Am I right, Nick? He's been injured, isn't he?
Yeah, we weren't able to see, I'm very always just kind of playing it safe with things like that. But he didn't get to do a ton in spring. Had kind of a non-contact injury. I don't know what happened, but a non-contact jersey on. Yeah. So didn't see a ton of Brooks. But from what I understand, I will say this, speaking with, players' families and things at the scrimmage, like he did some things last year and people really like Brooks and he's another guy in that room. So hopefully that's what I, feel comfortable saying about him. Again, that is a group like running back. I'd trust 8 or 9 guys to go out there on a Saturday. I really would.
And this is another good question. We'll end it on this one. David Daring says, before transitioning to basketball, Rajiv, summarize, if you could, please, anything Nick Osen saw from spring ball that he, to put it nicely, had further questions on coming out. So after all that spring ball, what are some of the maybe concerns that you're seeing from this team?
Are they going to be too good?
If any, really.
I think the only thing, because I actually struggled to answer this question in my Nick at Night column this week. So it was like any potential weaknesses. And I'm not going to say a team is 1,000% perfect, even though I struggled to find any. So I would just say, at times, specifically early on, maybe in the pass rush, the D-line didn't kind of get as much penetration as you'd hope. But then again, the last couple weeks, I'm not going to say he's going to be in the rotation, but what Ernest Willard Jr. can do, I don't think can be replicated. So I want to mention that, and that goes well with a name I wanted to say earlier too.
Worst case, he's a guy that shows it from the scout team, which is not a bad thing.
And then can be a massive, guy next year. Truly good. That's a good point, Justin.
I feel like we could talk football for hours, especially with Nick Osen. So thanks for joining us on this. Let's quickly move to basketball. Nick, I know you had a little time limit. If you need to drop off, you're welcome to do so. Thank you for joining us. But if you'd like to stay on through basketball, please do. So big additions. Last week we talked about Cameron Hunter because he had joined. Then we ended up getting a few more. So we've got Amos, we've got Tanji. Is Tanji official yet? Is he officially as part of this team yet?
Yeah,
Tanji's
that's out there.
That's done.
Yes, sir.
So we've got our 4, we've got our 3, we've got our 1. Justin, let's talk about overall, as the roster sits right now, are there big holes that still need to be filled? Or are you happy with the way that this roster is sitting right now? Given the view of, yes, and we've had a lot of guard discussion. We know that, just viewing from the lens of as it is right now, right? I mean, do you feel like we're okay going into next season?
I feel like we're okay. I struggle to look at the current roster and say that this is going to be better than what we had this last year. And that to me is where I get stuck on it, looking at it like, because after watching the film on the guys, Tanji is someone that I don't love his athleticism and mobility as much. And I think he's a guy who's going to struggle to get shots off at time. That said, I do like Amos. I think that he's a guy that has the athleticism pops when you look at it on film. And I think Hunter's going to be solid. But I think looking at this team, the question really comes down to is if you're a fan or if you're somebody who is a booster or whatever, what is your expectation of this group coming in? Is it to be what we were this last year, or is it to be more? Now that's going to be tough. Freitag is obviously going to be a guy that he kind of is an X factor to this roster, but I really struggle to put heavy expectations on somebody like that, even though I want to. I just don't think it's fair to put it on him and say like, hey, if we're late in the shot clock, you need to be the guy that's going to have to find a shot, because obviously, athletically speaking, he's that guy. But asking a true freshman to do that, that's asking a lot.
Yeah, I think, as much as I love and can talk about football all night, like I do think basketball is a specialty there too. I'm going to go both ways with this. I think it does depend on the expectations, Justin, like you mentioned. But being a little deeper, into this and some of the numbers, I don't even post on VIP and stuff like that. But some of the things guys thrown out there, and I'm now speaking from multiple points of view because I covered another big-time conference program too. So Iowa State and Wisconsin. Man, it is kind of hell, like being able to retain talent right now on these teams. It really is. So, obviously the store, I can say this now, and I kind of wrote about it too. I mean, that was expected more than people knew for a while. Mm-hmm. Hepburn, that one hurt, obviously. And, that people were upset about it, but like Cameron Hunter, if healthy, am I saying he's going to be Chucky? Not necessarily. I think Chucky's better at some things, but I think Hunter's going to be better at some things. Like I think his feel for the game, I think his strength and being able to finish through contact will be really good. Tanji, to me, I mean, I'm actually familiar with him because I just have some old friends that are big Colorado State fans. So I've watched him for a while. If he is healthy like he was in Fort Collins,
he looked better on his film from that for sure.
Yeah, he can play for sure. And then Amos, man, I could talk all night. I don't know exactly like the interest levels he had out there, but for Gard and Sharif Chambliss to have gotten him, he's big time. I think he's a bona fide pro, no question, potential NBA guy if he continues to develop. So pro, I'm using not just NBA, but like potential NBA if he continues to develop. He can shoot. He shoots that thing very well. He can move athletically, like you mentioned, Justin. He's not afraid to defend. And Coach Gard even said last week at his awesome Guarding Against Cancer event, he'll need to like hit the weight room well. He's got the frame to add muscle, but I'm pumped about those additions. I think personally it's going to be tougher to maybe finish where they did, in the Big Ten, just because it's now a larger conference and teams are loading up. But as a whole, man, after that first 2 or 3 weeks, I think you've got to be pretty positive overall.
From David Thering here, I haven't heard good things defensively. My screen here. Could be wrong, but I think we need to find a 6 foot or 4'5" or 6'10" plus defensive big to help ease the concerns. I think all of us agree that this team could use somebody that can affect shots. It's been a weakness for a while. So since,
to be fair, Amos does add a little bit of rim protection. He does add some rim protection. I think
and that's fine. It can be the 4 or the 5. It's just that you got to have somebody that can affect shots.
Right. One of the things that my concerns with Amos game. Look, I love that he can score offensively. He's a shooter, but he's a stretch 4. He's not really a physical 4. And I feel like we've lost post offense at this point because Wall had that. Right?
Yes.
He had the ability to post.
That I'll agree with.
We don't have that right now because Crowell obviously is Crowell, and he's his own sort of brand of post offense. But then you don't have Wall, and I don't know if Amos can really do it, or Tanji. He's a little bit bigger. I'm a little concerned about our ability to, if the ball's not going in, can we put it down low? Maybe it's Hunter. Ryan actually said that maybe Hunter's the guy that's going to post, have some more inverted guards. I'm a little bit concerned about that. But from an athletic perspective, my goodness, once again, we're adding more athleticism. And I would hope that these guys can finish a little bit better than some of our other, like last year, we had a finishing problem at times last year, especially Store.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully we can improve that a little bit because you got it. When you look at this team, Justin, I know that you said, you made a comment earlier, you don't think it's better than last year. Let me ask you this, just from an offensive perspective only, let's take defense and put it aside. Don't you feel like these guys, as it sits right now, can score the ball a little bit easier than last year's team?
I think from a spacing standpoint, it's going to be better. I struggle to look at it from the Crowell perspective of this necessarily affecting him a ton in the post, because I don't think his issue in the post with being ineffective at times had anything to do with double teams. I think it had more to do with the fact that he just at times really struggled against physical bigs, and he couldn't necessarily, he just would shut down and just be a no-show at times. So I don't know necessarily that. I think it definitely helps because I don't love him as a guy passing out of the double. I think he was a little slow to react at times. And I think that really hurt us in terms of flow offensively at times. Because if he was quick to get the ball back out of there when they started to show on the double, there would have been a lot of wide open threes that we would have pulled out of it last year if we could have got rid of the ball a little bit more.
I mean, Nick, we've got 5 guys who can now create their own shot pretty much. We've also got a starting 5 that, by the way, every one of them can shoot the 3. Every single one of them can shoot the 3, which, you know what, we haven't had that on our team in a really long time. And Wall was obviously he couldn't shoot it. I think that's something that people aren't talking about enough. You've literally got an entire starting 5 that you can shoot 3, and pretty much anyone you're bringing off the bench other than Carter Gilmore can shoot the 3. That's a really important thing to have on your team. I mean, and I feel like it opens things up dramatically and way better than we were last year. What do you think, Nick?
You know what else I think is going to be awesome in addition to that? If the starters are how I kind of imagine them, Hunter, Klez, Tanji, Amos, Crowell.
Yep.
It is an old lineup, which college basketball, because of NIL, because of the portal, because of the COVID year, although that's wrapping up, being old has been better the last couple seasons. And I think that's going to be really intriguing as well. We'll see, obviously, what shakes out, free tag or Blackwell, Tanji, what that looks like. But as a whole, you got to remember, you're now getting a John Blackwell with a year of experience. Nolan Winter, I certainly expect to hit the weight room hard and kind of add some skill set to his game. So I'm excited. I don't think, I don't think they're necessarily it'd be really interesting if you could play last year's team against this year's team. But I do think it's a tournament team, I believe. And I think that definitely garners some credit because of how the offseason began.
And listen, they're still talking to Boyd, right? There's another guy. I forgot his first name. Now I can't think of Boyd's first name. But he's another rim protector guy that they're trying to bring in potentially. So there is some activity, which I appreciate very much. And, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that is the best fit? Me personally, and I like it. I think ideally to me, What I would like to see is somebody that does offer some shot blocking a little bit, but more of like a 6'9" body that can kind of play both spots. Like I'd like somebody that can a little bit more of an athletic, thicker build to also play the 4 a little bit would be ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd be good with either. I think as long as they're 6'9", 6'10", and you know that it'll provide some rim protection, I think that would be a fantastic final ad.
Yeah, I mean, listen, rim protection is critical for us, and it's something that, I mean, look, we have to get better defensively all around, but at least if there's some rim protection to help us out, and I think we all would like a little bit more depth at the 4 position without certain people coming off the bench and playing. So let's just leave it there. But we'll go there. Nick, we've kept you a long time today. Thanks for giving us your time today. Where can people find your work? Tell us a little bit more about that so people can check you out outside of here.
I love coming on this show, man. I appreciate you guys. At The Real Nick Osen, as you can see right there, I share most of my work, and then Badgers 247. I'm so grateful you guys are on the boards, and we talk a lot of football, and it's been a lot of basketball recruiting, and that's only going to grow with OVs coming for football and evaluation periods for hoops. So it's going to be fun. Thank you guys.
Justin, final thoughts.
Nothing other than I just to all the other people out there that are in the Discord, I have been trying to get Nick to come in there and join us so he can see all the shenanigans we get up to. A little bit different vibe than 247.
Nick needs
there's a little bit more of a free-for-all in there, so just
Nick needs to join for sure.
He does.
The Discord, the Locked On Badgers Discord. Of course, our good friend Ryan Herrings leads that one. So yeah, we're in there a lot. It'll be good. With that, we'll close the show. There we'll be back again next week to talk a little bit more about football stuff. There's so much about. Honestly, we could have kept going. We really could have kept going. There's so much going on right now. And but listen, it's always a good time. And Nick, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, boys, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.